So what's up, everybody? How is everybody doing? It's Friday night in the Eastern Standard Time and the late afternoon, 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time on the West Coast. I am your trusty host, Jay Campbell, and I'm very excited today to be joined in the StreamYard virtual live studio with a guy that most of you folks do not know yet, but by the end of this show, we'll be very versed with. His name is Carlos Bertonatti. Carlos, man, how are you, man?
Hey, man. Fantastic, man. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to have you here. So we do have a lot of people watching. So let me just give you guys Carlos's backstory. It's a lot better for him to explain it. But anyway, Carlos is the brother of a good personal friend of mine, Miguel, who owns a big anti-aging age management clinic in Miami. And Miguel and I have been really, really good friends for about 2.5 years now, since he reached out to me like many people do. He says he read my books. And, you know, him and I met at seminars, the different anti-aging seminars, multiple ones now. And I think the second time I met him, he told me about his brother. And his brother, who's now happened to be on my show today. And by the way, Miguel doesn't get any live streams, just his brother does. I just hope in case he's in the background and listen to that. But he told me about his brother's story and how amazing of a human being he was. And so since he told me about that, which was a while ago, I said, well, dude, when he gets out, he's got to come on the show because I know his story is mesmerizing and he's going to help a lot of people. So he was like, yeah, dude, for sure. He's like, you know, I'm going to talk to him. And then I found out that he reads my books, why he was in prison in Florida. So, I mean, again, dude, like, it's an honor to have you here today. Obviously, I wanted to give him a little bit of a backstory of who you are. But before, you know, we do that, you know, just kind of tell people, because we have a lot of amazing points, because you are a very, very spiritually advanced human being.
Yes.
I want you to tell your story. And obviously, we only have about 90 minutes tonight because I want you to answer questions and stuff like that. I don't want to keep you here all night. Yeah. Which I know you and I could go all night. But just give them 100,000-foot summary of what happened to you, and then we'll get into the points that we want to cover. But just go ahead, share your story.
Well, you know, hi, everybody. My name is Carlos. Thank you for having me on the show, by the way, you know, and thank you for the kind words. I have a high threshold for, you know, what a good human being means. But basically, you know, I'm a regular guy. Grew up in Miami, originally from Venezuela. Had a great childhood. I mean, you know, I would be, I think, considered by, I guess, popular society to be someone of means and have a great privileged lifestyle and livelihood. And as a kid, I just have beautiful memories of being a child. And, you know, grew up with great parents, great values, and, you know, started off my professional career very young, 22 years old. I had a real estate company at a very young age, you know, successful, which ended up paying for one of my passions, which was music. And so I discovered that I had a little bit of a talent, I guess you could call it that, or a little bit of a skill, I would call it, at music, and started my music career, you know, and it was very grassroots. You know, I started playing at little bars, local bars, and jazz clubs and stuff like that. And it just grew to something that I never thought it would grow into. You know, music was something that it was a passion of mine. It was something very personal to me. Nothing that I thought that it would ever do professionally, but, you know, destiny had its course and put me on this path. And some great people came around me, and they actually, you know, implanted me with the idea that this could actually be a way of life. And so I embarked on this music career. You know, all throughout my childhood and my teens, I was, you know, obsessed with technology and science and psychology, and went to seminars and just to kind of find a sense of who I was and to build an identity. You know, it takes a while to build that. You know, you're out of college and they tell you, what do you want to be, you know, for the rest of your life? And those are decisions that were kind of hard for me. So, you know, you know, as I progressed professionally, I was always on this deep spiritual path to find out what my purpose was. And at that age, I found that I could inspire people through music, and if I could connect with them and send a message of love out through music, that what a privilege that would be. And so that's kind of how I started, and became successful at it. You know, I got signed to a record company, which, you know, that's really not all there is in success, of course, and there's a lot more to that. But so I got signed to a record company, and we started really doing everything that entails to become launching a young artist, a new artist, and we made some significant advances in that, man. And I was basically almost at the brink. You know, I was in the radio stations. I went on tour for a year and a half, and you know, the kind of ball started growing, right? And the fuss started to grow. And as I was, you know, kind of, I guess at the peak of that time in my life, I went out. I went out on a night in Miami. I had a lot of friends in the music industry, particularly this night, this DJ that we were talking about remixing, because I also loved, you know, my stuff is kind of organic, singer-songwriter, acoustic, but I always loved the dance and the electronic music feel too, with a lot of instrumentation. So I was working with this DJ to kind of get some remixes going. So I went to see him at a nightclub and spent some time there. You know, spent a lot of time there actually early morning. By the time I decided that you know, he kept playing. He never came down. I never got a chance to talk to him, and I figured that I was going to be there till 9 o'clock in the morning if I continued to wait. And at that point, I was just exhausted. I was exhausted. I had been working on my second record at the time, so there was a succession of nights that I had very poor sleep. I had maybe slept 3 hours consecutively for 3 days in a row. And then I was up for over 24 hours that night. So once I said, you know, in my mind that I finally had enough, I got in the car, man, and I just drove home. I drove home, and as I'm driving home, I start to get really, really tired. And I don't know if you've been in the situation where you're just exhausted and you're fighting sleep. And so, you know, I'm trying to lift my eyebrows. I'm putting the window down. I'm trying to scream in the car so that I don't fall asleep. I'm 3 miles away from home, and I just started, you know, I started nodding, and you know, I don't know if you ever had the experience where you kind of nod and you wake up and oh my God. So, you know, I should have pulled over. You know, hindsight is 20/20, and I should have pulled over and I should have stopped. I didn't. I just, you know, my life had always been about push and focus and drive. So I just said, man, I'm 3 miles away from home. Let me just, you know, let me get there. And then just in one of those nods, Jay, I mean, I'm sitting here 10 years, more than 10 years after this experience, and I still can't explain some of the things that happened. I still can't, and it still haunts me because I'm still trying to figure it out. But it was like one of those nods, what felt like to me as a split second, it was really like a 30-second just disconnect, complete blackout. I swerved off the side of the road, and I tragically struck an innocent man who was just out on a bike ride on a Sunday morning, man. And it was awful. I struck him, but, you know, and I know, you know, we can get into the legal aspect of all this stuff, but, you know, what I experienced through my eyes, I never felt impact. I never heard impact. I never saw impact. When I came to be, I was half a mile down the road, on the side of the road. You know, I looked around. I obviously knew that I had been involved in a crash, but that particular side of the road where I came to be, it was all bushes. So, you know, I looked around. I left my foot off the accelerator. Obviously, I'm freaking out. I'm screaming, "Oh my God!" What, you know, because just a second ago I was awake. Now it's like, you know, my windshield is smashed on the side. You know, it's mayhem at that point. So I try to look for my phone. And, you know, now that I'm sitting here talking, obviously I've done a lot of research into the psychology of what happens to people when they go through these experiences. And, you know, it was a lot of the fight and flight response. I just panicked. Simply, it just panicked. And so, you know, I had no point of reference because all I saw was just damage. I looked around. There was no cars. There was no people. There was no light posts. There was nothing. It was just bushes. So in my ignorance, I said, you know what? I'm 3 miles away from home, 2 miles away from home, whatever it was. And I just need to get off the road. I need to get the F home. That's what my brain kept screaming. Get the F home, get the F home, right? So very unwise of me, of course. And I continued to drive. I went through my neighborhood, you know, car with all this significant damage on you know, on the vehicle. And then all of a sudden I started hearing sirens. Of course, I knew the sirens were for me. I knew that. I just simply, you know, I waited for the police car to get behind me, and I pulled over. The guy brings the gun out. You know, I'm like, whoa, you know, kind of shocked by the whole experience. And I get in the car. I get in the back of the cop car, and I simply told myself, I'm going to tell this guy the truth. I mean, I fell asleep. I hit a tree, and I just came home, and I freaked out. I'm trying to get home safely. Little did I know, man, that I had left a human being behind me, and that it was just atrocious. And I didn't realize what was going on until basically, a cyclist. I live in a cul-de-sac at the time. I was living in a cul-de-sac street with two big bumps, so you can't really speed there. And this guy in full tactical, cyclist gear with the clip-on shoes, the long helmet, he looks at me. He has this very angry look at me, and then he goes and talks to the police officer, and he spends a considerable amount of time talking to the police officer. I think nothing of it. My neighbors are coming out. I'm feeling embarrassed, and it's just really a crazy situation. And then all of a sudden, there comes another cyclist, and another cyclist, and then another cyclist. So now there's a group of them, and one of them kicks the car, and he starts screaming obscenities at me, and he just says, "Hey, I hope they give you 40 years in prison." And instantly, I knew that somebody had been involved. And I can't even describe to you the agony of what that's like to first of all be in a position where you're someone who's so focused, so in control, and all of a sudden you didn't even realize that you did this. And then, but the heavier part is that I actually hurt somebody. And so I'm panicking in the car and I'm freaking out. Long story short, I get charged with DUI, manslaughter, all this stuff, and the whole legal circus begins. And 3.5 years later, I got sentenced to 12 years in prison, and completed that, which was no walk in the park. But I recently came out of that situation, and I'm here standing in front of you. It's almost surreal that I'm actually here even talking about it to other people, because again, this is something that's very personal to me. And unfortunately, because of, my guess is because of my career at the time, there was a bunch of stuff on YouTube and interviews and, all that kind of stuff. So the media grabbed onto that and, played it and played it and played it. So I think in a sense it was not to belittle at all what happened, because it's very serious, very tragic. And there's somebody who lost a family member, and I take that very seriously. But in regards to the media, it was a little, just kind of, my life was under a microscope, if I could say it that way. And, right. And the outcome was the outcome. They gave me the punishment, and I took it. And I'm grateful that I'm alive and that I came out of it in one piece, man. And that I learned the lessons that I learned, and the deep spiritual lessons about what happened, why did it happen, and what's to happen now after that. It's kind of like, okay, so what now? And that's where I'm at right now.
Carlos, man, I got to tell you, dude, I got a little bit choked up. Like my eyes have watered a little bit, man, because I seriously, I want to cry right now, man. Like first off, I have a profound love for you, man. Like I really do, man. Like I sense like I'm losing it right now. Like I sense how you felt. Like I just tapped into your energy stream of how profound what you just said was. And I just tapped into it. Like, and first off, man, like you're a very strong brother, because a lot of people would have literally fallen to pieces. And I know what you went through. I mean, I've been through a similar situation, not anything like you, but I've been in the whole, I had things happen to me that actually I wasn't even guilty of, but nothing like what you went through, and as obviously I talked to you off air, and, since you and I met about a month and a half ago, I guess, right, when you got out. I mean, how long has it been since you've been out? It's only been a couple months, right?
35 days, something like that.
Not even 2 months. Okay, so, but as I sensed you and I told you, and you and I have both done a lot of work, and obviously you were doing the work inside. Yeah. But I really feel, and it's not even a feeling. I mean, it's a knowing, like your soul, that was part of your, your experience here in this planet, in this incarnation, to learn to, that was part of your mission, was for your soul to check out and go to sleep and have that happen to you so that you could experience that. But anyway, I want to, just a couple of questions I have for you about when you were going through the sensationalism of the media and them prosecuting you or attempting to prosecute you and going through all of that. Do you feel, and again, I know you're over it and you have no blame and you're past all that stuff, but do you feel that your attorneys did the best job they could, or were they just a victim also of circumstances and they were going to make an example out of you no matter what?
Listen, that's a great question and a hard one to answer. I'm not in anybody's head. I learned a lot through the process, and I saw a lot of the faults and a lot of the cracks and a lot of the gaps that just the system creates.
Right.
And for anybody who's listening, I don't want them to get the sense that I'm just trying to say that I got victimized by the system. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. There's a real victim in this case, and it's not me. And I take that very seriously. And every time, because there was a lot of people that said, Carlos, because look, from a personal standpoint, I know that my creator knows that day, he knows exactly what happened that day. And I know that he knows that there was no evil intent in my heart. There was no criminal intent in my heart. I'm not disputing the evidence or anything of what the legal case says. I'm just trying to tell you what I experienced through my eyes. Yeah. And people, a lot of people tell me, especially when you get to prison, when you meet guys that have some serious charges, some real hard crimes, who have lived a lifestyle that's like that. And guys would often tell me, hey, you're here for an accident. And that's a difficult word, because there was a lot of responsibility in my behalf. There was a lot of carelessness and a lot of recklessness that I took responsibility for, and I still take responsibility for. And one of the, I think you and I talked about it. One of the ambivalences that I have is, people say, well, it was an accident and it was for you to learn something. And while all those things might be true in a certain sense, if I was in control, the outcome would have been different. I'm standing here today, 12 years after this thing, or 10 and a half years after this thing, and I'd still tell you that if I could go back and trade positions with him, with the victim in this case, his name is Christopher LaCain, I would trade that position today, because I think that's a fair deal. And I just don't, that kind of accountability falls heavy on your spirit. And the ambivalence comes from, it was a learning experience, and my hope is that I can bless people. Well, I don't bless anybody, but that my story would inspire people or help them in any kind of way. But it almost, for me, it's kind of like a sweet and, bittersweet, because it came at a very expensive cost. And I take that very seriously. I always call that the portion, that's the spiritual sentence that I serve in silence that nobody ever knows about, because I know that even the day that I got out, I know that moment where I embraced my family finally, after all the hardships and all the struggle and all the sacrifices and all the pain and all the suffering, especially that I put them through, and the other family, I knew that it would be a sad day for the other family. And I knew that, and I still know that. And so it's hard for me to sometimes process that my gain came at the expense of somebody else. Because if it would have been just me by myself and my life would have ended that day, then that would have been fair. But, sometimes I have a little bit of a hard time, kind of consolidating that my gain had to come at somebody's loss. So I battle that that's a battle that goes on within me. I'm not going to say day to day, but it's something that I continually reflect on. I think that you and I talked about when I was in prison and wanted to throw a pity party, obviously Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, those special dates when you're supposed to be surrounded by family. Right. Anytime that I even sensed the moment that I was going to get sad or depressed or angry or, oh my God, my life is, passing me by or whatever, I thought about that family. I thought, they like to be with him today too, I'm sure. Yeah. And, to me, there's a what most people don't know is that this really hit home. He was 44 years old at the time. I have friends that are that age. I'm 39, so I'm not that far away. He has a brother that they had a great connection. I love my brother to death. And he had a daughter that was my goddaughter's age. Wow. And I know what that's like. Well, I don't know what that's like, but I know that little girl would never have the chance to, go to him when she was heartbroken or when she was in love, or walk her down the aisle. Yeah. I dated women that had lost a father at a young age, and I know the psychological impact that has. And so that's, like I said, that's the part of my spiritual sentence, and that's fine. I'll take that. And it's not supposed to be some kind of morbid or guilt-ridden thing. It's just something that will help me remember. Right. I never want to forget about that, because I don't want to be a jerk. I want to remember that, because that's what keeps me humble, grounded, and keeps me on purpose and with a vision to, hey, this has to count. This has to count. Because, when you're going through it, Jay, so many people, man, just kind of blast their opinion about what they think about the matter. But, that's very easy to do when you're on the outside. You don't know what it's like until you walk the shoes, right? And so a lot of people were, I was getting hate mail, I hope you get raped in prison and all this stuff. And I found that people have a weird fetish about that, by the way. But, and sometimes in some moments during the process, I kind of almost started subscribing myself to that. Like, well, I should be punished. I should go to hell and all this stuff, right? But it came to a point, man. Well, I think when everything changed, there was three key moments for me. And one of them, and this came afterward. This is like the third key point. When I realized that God, in His infinite wisdom, man, He allowed for things to play out the way that they did. Like I said, if it was me, I would have done another deal. But in His infinite wisdom, He chose for it to be that way. And I know that in the end, being equal creations, I knew that He loved him just as much as he loved me. And whatever plan he had, it was His plan. But I knew that my destruction was not His desire. Right. And so for me, it came a moment of decision where I said, well, the only way that I can honor what was lost that day is for me to become the best version of myself that I can possibly be and be a servant to others, because otherwise then I wouldn't honor that. And, that might be kooky or an out there or whatever it is, but that was what worked for me. That's what gave me the sense of mission and the purpose and kind of the foundation of what I wanted to create and what I wanted my life to be about from that moment forward.
Yeah, man. We have a lot of discussion points, but I do want to just ask you from a personal standpoint, before we get into these points, when you first got to prison, what was it like? So going in, were you scared shitless? I mean, because I know that you're not a scared person, but because of the inexperience and because you really don't know what you're dealing with, and plus you're obviously already in a bad spot because you feel guilty for what happened, even though it was an accident. What was your first impression of going into prison? What were your concerns?
Well, first of all, of course, all the things that you see in the movies and you grow up hearing about prison, that's the first thing that crosses your mind, and then the second part of it, to back that up, was, I guess the best way that I could describe it is like being a fish out of water. I was totally out of element, totally in a world that I didn't understand. And there's a lot of viciousness and perversion in prison, man. And so, just getting accustomed to that energy. Of course, you're inside freaking out. And I don't know how good I was at this, but and this is a funny kind of correlation. I remember, you ever been skydiving?
I have not ever been skydiving, but I have jumped out of an airplane in a parachute, but I've never been actually.
All right. Well, I remember the time that I went skydiving. I bought the whole package, the pictures and the videos and stuff. And I remember when I got on the plane, I was absolutely freaking out inside. Inside my head, I was screaming at this dude, please stop videotaping me, because I could feel that I was freaking out. I could feel it. My heart was pumping out of my chest. I could feel my face being, all anxious. But then when I saw the video, I looked perfectly fine. So I don't know how much of that played into that, where I was freaking out inside, but I just had a good way of not showing it, because that's a big part. It's physiology and how you carry yourself in prison. And for any kind of arena, it's how you carry yourself that really will determine the kind of challenges that you get into. And I think, people read into that energy, man. People read into that energy. And, look, I'm not a tough guy. I'll never profess to be a tough guy, but I've never been a coward either.
Right.
And I'm someone who wears his heart on his sleeve. What you see is what you get. Right. So I never tried to pretend like someone I wasn't. It was evident to everybody around me. And, as I made friends in there, they kind of, we laughed at the first time that they met me or that they saw me. I made no objections to the fact that I was new to this world. I didn't know what was going on, and I'm kind of freaking out. So help me out. So, look, I think you find kindness in anywhere. What's good and what's right is always available. And, I've never met someone who is evil all the time. I've never met anyone who's mean all the time.
Right.
You see kindness and love and expressions of altruism in prison. You can't be mean all the time. So I guess I play those people's emotions. And some of the guys that I met, man, really, I guess in a sense protected me, because for some reason, Jay, I don't know how much of this is just serendipitous, but every time I went, because I've been to like 7 different institutions, and every institution has its own little like kind of subculture. But every institution that I went to, I somehow, some way found a way to become friends to, I guess, the alpha male or the alpha inmate or whatever you want to call them, the man of the house,
right,
whatever you want to call them. I always made somehow, some way to make him laugh and become friends with someone who, hey, if you mess with him, you kind of mess with me, type of deal.
Right.
So, I was blessed in that sense. Yeah, I was lucky.
Well, so I know the answer to that, because we're very similar people, and you have the ability, the beauty of connection.
Right. And
you know how to, I mean, honestly, bro, it's right here, man. It's your vibration. You attract like attracts like, and you bring the best out of people, and you also attract the best type of people. And I know that sounds kind of weird because you're in prison, and a lot of people, are going to hear me say that and be like, oh, Jay doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. But the truth is, and we're not going to start, labeling people in prison, but as you know, there are many people in prison that shouldn't be in prison. And I don't want to talk about that, but there are thousands of men in the United States right now, not hundreds of thousands of men and women, by the way.
Yes.
Who are in prison for very minor, ridiculous crimes like smoking weed, tax forgery. I mean, there's all sorts of shit. And as you know, the system is so broken. If you don't have money, they can put you in for a long time for the dumbest of shit. But anyway, I don't even want to talk about that because I know who you are and I know why you are able to do well in prison. It's because of your being and your vibration. But let's talk about some of these points because I want people to understand like what kind of person you are. So the first one that we have is the importance of surrender, as I say, to spiritualize the being. And I put that first because I really think, and you're going to talk about this, but I really think that this, surrendering to your basically your environment or surrendering to your circumstances is the key for all people in all walks of life for everything. Because until you actually do that and recognize, and accept and take full responsibility, and that's one of our points coming.
Absolutely.
You're just going to be in victim and in blame and never really become responsible and again, personally accountable for what's happened to you. And as you know, you did have an accident. Now, yes, there were responsibilities. You shouldn't have driven. You should have, you were tired, but you still ultimately did not intend to kill someone. Right. But you still had to accept the reality that, this is my lesson. So anyway, talk about this, the importance of surrendering.
Yeah, I think that, I'm going to give you from a theoretical point of view and then from a practical point of view. I'm a very practical guy, by the way. If there's, I love theories, but if I can't use them in my life, then don't waste my time. I'm a guy that I'm results focused.
Yep.
So when we talk about this, I don't want people to think that I just subscribe to any kind of belief system and I just followed it blindly. I will give the caveat though that I am an unapologetic, enthusiastic Christian, and that's just my belief system that I use. But it's important to talk about spirituality, not religion, because religion perverts everything. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of guys, a lot of people that want to be spiritual that know that there's this ultimate wisdom, that there's this creator that is responsible for the fact that we're here alive. A lot of those people have this, we have that desire, that hunger, that thirst that can only be quenched by that source. And religion tends to like push people away, even people that are on the fence. So it's sad for me to see that, but it's important to talk about spirituality. And I think, in related to the point, the scriptures say, blessed is he who knows his spiritual need. Right. Now, it's not a want, it's not an ought, it's not something that happens great. No need. We have a spiritual need, and it's absolutely, crucial, right? So for me, in a practical sense, it was when I, like I told you before, read all the psychology books, went out to all the seminars, did the Tony Robbins thing, and all the other guys in that genre. And so I was always someone who thought of myself as very in control, very determined, very driven, control my destiny, blah, 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 blah. But everything changes when that gets ripped away from you and when you can no longer control that. Right. Something changes. And so I came to that point where I just I came to the end of myself, if you can understand that. I came to my wit's end. I mean, I didn't have the answer. I was freaking out. I had this enormous problem, this enormous sense of guilt, all this stuff that was happening, and I didn't know how to manage it. I basically, spiritual sense, I was broken, down on my knees, to the end of myself, said, help me. If you're there, help me. And I surrendered it was like surrender to that energy. And it's almost like that energy needs you to get there. It's weird, but it needs you to get there, because when you think you're in control and you think you know everything and you think you got it all, you got all the answers, there's nothing that can come in. You understand? So when you're broken and when you're empty, that's when I think God can do his work. And for me, it came at that point. It came when I was incarcerated, and I got there. And my brother always reminds me of this, but I used to say, I'd be on the phone sometimes, and or walking around. I'd walk around like a rat in his cage, and I just walk, because I had all this energy and all this anxiety, and I didn't know how to. I'm an intense. If you can't tell, I'm a little bit intense. So. I would sometimes look down on my body, Jay, and I would just say, I can't believe that I'm in this body. Like, this is real. This is happening. This is the truth. And so I basically came to a point, man, when I just broke down. I surrendered to that source, and I said, if you're there, I'm here. Do your work. And if you allow me, man, I will serve you. I will serve you. And that's where everything changed.
So how long were you in prison before that actually happened?
I can't tell you a specific time, but it had been a few months.
So so it happened pretty early. So you didn't really have to like deal with any kind of like real, because one of the points is obviously suffering, right? And understanding what that is. But so you really were blessed in that you basically, as my spiritual mentor always told me, you figured out that you had to surrender early.
Right. Yeah, and it's almost like the science behind breaking a wild horse. When you first mount him, the horse tries to buck, and so when I first got into the system, I'm trying to defend myself. I'm trying to do, it's inevitable, man. We all have. Our cells are programmed for self-preservation. So of course there was an element of self-preservation where I wanted this problem to go away. So I kicked and screamed and tried to fight, and then it got to the point. It gets to the point where the horse knows that, hey, I can't buck this guy off. This is just what it is. Right. And it came to that point where I just had to accept that and say, okay, Carlos, this is real. This is happening. You're probably not going to get out of this. So you better make the best of it now, and you better pay attention.
So it goes right into the next point, which is choosing to become empowered and accountable as a positive force of light. So my question to you, and I kind of think I know the answer, but you knew once you recognized there was no way you could get out, like you said, horse bucking the system, you were going to have to do your time.
Right.
Did you basically decide at that moment that, like, because you're already an accountable guy, but did you decide at that moment that you were going to become a force of light for the other people in there, and that you were going to become like a force of light? You were wisdom. You would help others. It was just like a conscientious choice of you now to like do whatever you could to serve the people inside there.
Yeah. Well, let me just address two things real quickly. First, on the accountability part, I just want to make everybody understand that I pled guilty to my crime.
Right.
Yes, of course, I fought it for 3 years, but that's only because I had no idea. I wanted to plead guilty from the first time. I apologized from moment one. But, that's when the attorneys take over, and there's strategy, there's culture, and there's influence. And it was kind of like, there was this massive pipe that broke in my house, and I hired a plumber to fix it. I don't know anything about plumbing, guys, right? So, and that's not to put the blame on them. They did what they needed to do, and I'm not going to focus my energy on that. But that's just a part on accountability I want people to understand. The second part was, I remember specifically to the point that we're trying to discuss. It was, while you're fighting your case, there's always hope, right? There's always like, I might get out of it. Oh my God, how much are they going to get? Because at the time, because of if you accumulated the charges, and these were the things that, I would go back to myself and just break down and cry. They were talking about 67 years in prison. I'm 28 years old. I'm doing the math in my head. There's guys screaming, psychs, throwing feces at from their cell to cell, and all this stuff is going on. And I'm thinking 67 years of this, you might as well just shoot me right now. So, but so while you're going through the case, there's always that hope, right? So everything came down when the gavel finally came down, when it was finalized, when the judge said what she needed to say. And she said, I hereby sentence you to 12 years in prison, pop. And she put the gavel down, and it was like, the courtroom was filled, standing room only with all my family and friends, and they had to hear this. My mom started crying, friends and family started oohing and eyeing, and I just went numb. That's the perfect way that I can describe it. I just went numb, where I just didn't feel anything. I saw my family exit. I went back to the dungeon where they were holding me, and when I walked into the cell, everybody was looking up at the TV. I'm on the TV. So when I come into the cell, everybody kind of wants to talk to me or encourage me. And I said, listen, I just need to be left alone, man. So I went back to my bunk, or a bunk, I should say. And I think you and I talked a little bit about this, being someone who's so in control and focused and determined. I've never understood people that were, that had panic attacks, or nervous breakdowns. Well, let me tell you, I understood them that day, because when I laid on my bunk, I was on the brink of a nervous breakdown. I mean, here comes everything that I had ever worked for, everything that I ever loved, everything that I thought I stood for, just came crumbling down like the Twin Towers, right? In just a split second. So, and I'm looking at 12 like a mountain, right? Considerable amount of time. So I sat down on my bed, and I took a series of very long and heavy breaths, and it was like this thing came over me, man. And it was like I had a meeting between my intellect, my heart, and my soul. And I said, okay, I don't care how you do this. I don't care how you get it done. But today, this moment right here, right now, you are going to make a vow to never, ever, ever allow this place or these people to turn you into the animal that they want you to become. And my goal had, my elementary desire was to be a force for good. I mean, call it cheesy or whatever you want, but that's something that always played at my heart. And so I made a decision that day, because I had seen at that moment, I had already spent some years through the system, and I had seen the perversion. I had seen what the system does to people. Right. And you start to become very institutionalized. That starts to become your reality, and your box starts to become that reality, and you forget that there's a very real world outside. And so you start playing into prison rules, and it just goes haywire from there. So I made a vow that day that I wasn't going to let this place turn me into an animal. I wasn't going to be the kind of person that those people, point and be like, oh, look what prison did to me. Look what prison did to him. And for me, the inspiration was every time I got off the phone with my family, it was two choices. It was either they were going to say, oh my God, I'm concerned for him, or look what prison is doing to him, or they were going to either be inspired or really proud of how I was handling it. And so I chose, obviously, to push, and I fought for that.
Amazing, Ron. Amazing. I just have so many questions, but I really want to get through these points, because I think it's better to let you explain the points that you really came up with that we really wanted to talk about. Obviously people want me to ask you, did you throw down with anybody while you were in the hole?
Listen, this is actually one of the proudest things that I could say about going there. And it relates to the point.
Right.
And it's almost unheard of. I'm not going to say that I'm the only one, but it's certainly the only one that I heard of. I never, because of the things that I adhere to, and we'll get into that a little bit further if we get a chance. But because of the belief system that I adhere to, and because of the commitments that I had made, I never had to use violence ever in prison.
That's awesome, bro.
I never had to use violence, and that's not to say that excuse my French, I'm a pussy, or because like I said, I gave the caveat from the beginning. I'm not a tough guy, but I'm not a coward either. And there was plenty of very close calls. But in my deep within me, I knew that God had given me this brain to create and to overcome, not to bang it against fists. and to me, even when it came to close calls, I would have this conversation with the person. I'd be like, listen, man, it's an insult to my intelligence, and it should be an insult to yours that we're going to fight about this phone. I mean, plain and simple. You're 40 years old. I'm 36 years old. What do you, are we really going to fight about this? Right. So that's kind of how I defended that. And I never had to use violence, man. I never had to, thank God, I never had to use violence, but I think I'm a witness that you can survive a very violent place without using violence.
Well, again, it's your vibration, man. Like attracts like, and, even in my life, and, I'm not a violent person either. I mean, I've been in a number of fights growing up when I wasn't as mature as I am now, but like,
yeah, me too.
you can always de-escalate a fight by just being reasonable. And again, maintaining an elevated vibration. I mean, being peaceful, being reasonable. I mean, obviously there's going to be certain circumstances in your life where it's like, fight or die. Right. But in a place like that, your conscious was able to dictate how you could control and de-escalate things with people. And again, I just know your energy. I know that, you can be in a room with a person or two and you can easily be like, look, man, violence is not the answer. And then, explain it to them in a calm, compassionate, kind, caring, concerning way that will literally drop their anger.
Yeah,
their
totally.
Program.
In real life, it happens a lot quicker. So you have to think a lot quicker on your feet. Right. I think the outcome of that was it comes from a deep belief within me that we're all the same. There's an essence that, we're so focused on what makes us different. But in reality, we have so much more in common than we have differences. No matter where you grew up, no matter what kind of childhood you had, or whether you're from Africa or Afghanistan or from Venezuela or whatever it is, we basically deal with the same problems and we have the same human needs. And so for me, it was always that sense of knowing my place, knowing that I'm not better than anybody, because, prison pretty much makes you equal all the way around, just starting from the uniform. So it was that sense that for me, it was about building the bridge rather than building a barricade. Right. And so for me, it was always getting to that pulling on those strings that, hey, man, we're just human. Listen, I'm not your enemy, man. We have a different enemy. If anything, you and I should be working together, because if we get in a fight over the phone, this is exactly why these people point the finger at us and say, hey, this is why we need to keep these guys locked up, because they're a bunch of animals. They're fighting over cookies. Right. So for me, it was like, hey, let's be smart, man. Let's be on the same team. There's no reason why I should escalate to this. So
I'm kind of moving around. Awesome, man. I mean, I'm just listening, bro. I'm moving around for some of these bullet points. I feel like just based on our discussion, and I know that this is a really good one for you, because for anyone, and by the way, and again, we've had many conversations off air, but this is how I live my life. And I really want to stress this, because I know this, but very few people ever learn this. And this is the cause, or if not the key, to most suffering in life. And that is, quantum physics tells us that what we focus upon is granted, but so many people focus on what they don't have.
Yes.
Instead of what they want. And then that wanting never leads to a plan. And it always leads to that victim consciousness template, because they're constantly thinking that the reason they don't get what they want is because they're not worthy of it. Right. Instead of actually focusing on what you want and then being massively, actionably intentional, with loving and kindness to get there. So anyway, talk about that.
Yeah, there's a lot there. The first is, for me, was the deep instilled belief, man, that life is a gift.
Yeah, man.
No matter how you see it, man, I don't care what it is. Life is a gift.
Yeah,
just the privilege of feeling is a gift, because the alternative is no life. And I guess life is better than no life for me. And so, perspective is everything, right? When you're in prison, you meet a lot of guys who have life sentences. And immediately your perspective changes, because you know that you have a release date. And I can't tell you the amazing man. And by the way, when I talk about guys in prison, I don't mean to glorify crime or to belittle anything they did. I'm just talking about the human experience, the part of it that bonds us spiritually. I met guys who, there's this one guy, Ace, one of my brothers in there, man. I met him very early on in my experience, and here's this, African-American dude, 260 pounds, humongous. I mean, probably the most masculine man that you could ever meet, the toughest dude that you could ever meet, yet not a single curse word ever came out of his mouth. Wow. And every time that I met with him to work out in the morning, he was full of life and zest and humor and love and just awesome, excitement, and so every time I showed up, it was almost like, who am I to ever complain about what I have? Here's this guy who's been in prison for 33 years. He doesn't know when he's coming out, and he's so inspiring to me. So for me, it was like, lesson. So that's one of them. The other thing for me personally was, like I said, I always go back to this, was that no matter how bad it got for me, no matter how much I wanted to complain, there is someone in this story that doesn't get to come back home, Carlos.
Right, bro.
I get to come back home.
Right, man.
And so shut up, stop being a P, and get with it, right? So for me, it was the sense that this was a gift, that no matter what it was, this challenge was a gift, and that it was there to teach me something, and that if I didn't pay attention, then it was time wasted. But if you pay attention to the lessons, man, if you pay attention to, and we go back to suffering, there's meaning in suffering. And, I always objected to, and I still continue to object to this, that, they say there's a big saying in prison, you don't come to prison to make friends. Well, I sincerely object to that, because I had met some incredible people in there. Because let me tell you, man, when you're with somebody day in and day out, week after week, month after month, year after year, and you're suffering together, you're eating together, you're crying together, I was on the praise team in prison, so played music with, go to classes with, and just deal with the pressure that it is to be incarcerated. That kind of stuff is like those peak experiences that bond you. I mean, I'll tell you right now, man, I have friends in there that know me, and I know them more than people that have been in my life for 25 years.
Of course, man.
So, because that kind of stuff, it gets real deep, real quick, real intense, and real intimate at the same time. So in terms of the point that you have here on the bottom of the screen, it is about the realization that this is a gift, man. And every gift comes with you being a steward of that gift. And so I'm a God-fearing man, and I didn't understand what the fear of God meant until somebody explained it to me this way. They said, Carlos, imagine that you are a high-level executive at a Fortune 500 company, and you are in charge of an entire team and an entire section of the company that's very crucial to the success of that company. And every year, you're going to go in front of the board, and you're going to give a presentation as to what you did that year and how the company succeeded or progressed or didn't progress for the things that you did that year. Obviously, if you were in that position, you're going to feel some kind of, stress or anxiety or nervousness being in front of that board, because you got to give accountability. And so as a God-fearing man, that's kind of how it's like. The scriptures say that at the end of our life, the spirit goes to him who created it. And so what that means to me is that at the end of my life, I'm going to face this infinite, wise, loving, righteous being who's going to ask me, what did you do with the gifts that I gave you? And that's an immense sense of accountability, not of fear, but for me of inspiration to do something. If I show up to your house and I give you a go-kart, okay? And at the end of the year, I show up and the go-kart is oxidated and full of rust, and it looks like you never paid attention to it. Right. Am I going to give you another gift? Probably not. I'm probably going to tell you, hey, fix it and let me see what you can do with it. However, the contrast of that, if you show up and you see that I not only fixed the car, but I started going into competitions and I became the best go-kart racer in the nation, I'd be like, hey, this guy really did something. I might give him a race car, right? So that's kind of how I see my relationship. I feel this deep sense of responsibility because, and and I mean this everybody, but specifically as men, you know, we're given a specific responsibility to have a circle of influence. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to be, you know, on TV, but every man has a circle of influence that he's responsible for, I believe, right? And that comes to your family, your wife, and all this stuff, right? So, you know, a lot of people say, oh, the man is the head, and it's not this male chauvinistic stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that our responsibility as men is to be leader servants.
Right.
And so our responsibility, and I'm sure that you know this with your wife, your responsibility is her spiritual progress.
Right.
Her progression. That's what our preoccupation should be. And so, you know, in terms of the theme that we're talking about, it's about that belief, man. That belief that life is a gift, that I'm going to have to render an account of that gift, and I just want to make it the best it could be. Because all I want to hear, Jay, when I get up there is good job. I mean, you know, the cherry on the top might be, hey, here's this promotion, but I don't expect the promotion. I just want a little gold star on my exam, man. That's all I want.
Yeah, but people like you, man, and me, because we're very similar people, you know, we get sent back, dude. There's a lot for us to continue to do. Get back down there. Okay, so
people always tell me, oh, listen, you were the right guy for the job. I'm like, I wish I didn't have the qualifications.
Bro, that's about the strongest state, because like I told you, man, like, you blacked out because that's the only way they could have got you to lose control, to have that happen to you so that you could learn from this. Because look, man, I don't care, you know, anybody who watches this, and we got a lot of people watching, you know, we've had between 80 and 100 people watching this live the whole time, but there'll be a lot of people that will watch this after. And the truth is that every experience is a learning opportunity.
Right.
And it goes back to what we were saying, like, you know, you can look at your life, you know, I'm almost 50, you're almost 40, we're 10 years apart, but we can really look at our lives and say, holy shit, you know, I went to prison for 9 or 10 years, and you could be like, wow, that was a fucked up time. Or you could be like you and be like, wow, that was the greatest opportunity of a lifetime, because look what I gained from that. Right. So everything as a person is what we look at and how we then label it. And you can label things as good or bad, but as I always tell people, the universe doesn't label anything as good or bad. The universe only delivers what you focus upon. That's just the way the world exists. So it's like, why would you ever, and again, it took me a long time in my life, Carlos, to learn this. You know, I was,
me too, trust me.
I was F you pay me, bro, all the way up until I was 41 years old. And then my life unraveled on me, which was totally my responsibility and my fault. And I take full ownership for it. But looking at it now, it was a blessing, because it allowed me and shaped me to become the man that I've been to become, and the man that was able to meet my amazing wife, and to the man that's been able to get my children back into my life and do all these things. And so, again, no matter who you are watching this, no matter where you're at, whether you're worth $50 million or 15 cents, it doesn't matter. It's how you feel about yourself. It's how you love and trust yourself. And it's how you look at all the things that have happened to you now and will happen to you eventually, and how you label those things and learn from them. That's the key to life. Now, there's two other points that we're going to talk about. And one of them is, the last one is, of course, the best one, which I always save. But health is truly a state of mind and can only come from sobriety. Before you say anything, I just want to say that this is obviously this is the biggest tenet of my life. You know, I tell people this all the time, because we're getting kind of into health optimization aspect, but you cannot build a spiritually advanced body, a physical meat suit, until you recognize that physical optimization, you know, through a clean diet, through building, you know, muscle, you know, improving cardiovascular endurance, all that stuff. You cannot connect spiritually if your body and your physicality is a wreck.
Right.
And so many people don't understand that. You know, people will come at me, they'll come at you, they'll come at anybody who says something like that and say, yeah, but you don't have to be a great physical shape to be spiritual or to believe in God or to any of those things. And I always say, of course you don't. But if you truly want to connect to the divinity, which is around us at all times as an energetic source, you have to physically take care of yourself. You can't physically express in a way that you would be able to when you're in better shape versus being morbidly obese, heavily inflamed, a drug addict, an alcoholic, a foodaholic, whatever it is, right? Because they're all vices. And again, I'm not labeling anybody who is one of those people, but it's like the Greeks said a sound mind built a sound body.
Yes.
You cannot realize your fullest potential as a being in a physical meat suit experience until you take your health seriously. I want your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing that I would say from a spiritual sense is, scripture is very clear. It says your body is the temple of God.
Exactly, man.
And so to kind of put that in layman's terms to people that are not, theologians or deep into this stuff, I always say it this way. Look, if Donald Trump was going to come to your house, okay, how would you have your house? Would you have it a mess with dirty and dust, or you would have it nice and upkept and clean and make sure that everything was running right? And of course. Right. And so if we start from there, that this was the vessel that was given to us, and it was made perfect. I mean, right. And I'm sure, you've gone into you're a genius at this. If you study the physical in our body, this perfect, beautiful machine. Yeah. And it's connected to our brain and everything that we feel. So if this is dirty and your vessel is not working right, well, you're not going to navigate the waters of life efficiently. It's just not going to happen. So, for example, for me in prison, a big part of it was being strong, right? Having mental fortitude and emotional fortitude. And one of the biggest things for me was, well, how do I accomplish that? Well, in order to feel strong, well, I got to be strong. And so I started lifting weights and all this stuff. And then that's when I started reading all the books, right? My brother, he runs this beautiful company called the Medical Health Institute, and he's super passionate about this subject. As an entrepreneur trying to start this company from the ground up, which he did, and I'm super proud of him. Obviously as an entrepreneur, you have no time, right? So he started sending me book after book of many of the doctors and authors that we read, and I just started to become fascinated by this subject. And he basically, not that he wanted me to do the work for him, but he said, listen, man, I'm really busy. I'm trying to start this company. I got a lot of people. I just need you to read these books and give me the footnotes. Tell me what I need to know so that I could just pick the fruit, right? The low-hanging fruit. We would go on endless discussions about this stuff because I was so fascinated about it that I would discuss it with him. And that's one of the things that deeply bonds us, which is a beautiful thing. But absolutely, man, absolutely. Your brain is an intelligent being that is also very sensitive. And so it's like, if you want to operate if you want to have the energy, the focus, the drive, the desire, all those things, those intangibles that kind of fill in the gaps, your vessel, which is the thing that's breaking the water, has to be peak performance, and there is no, there's two things. I mean, there was one thing that always got me from, said, nothing tastes as good as being healthy feels.
Exactly.
Nothing. And so that's when I got the clean diet and all this stuff. And, also I learned something. We live social lives, right? We live social lives. And it has been embedded in our culture for quite some generations ago that alcohol is a very socially acceptable thing, and everybody does it, blah blah blah. And even I never, honestly speaking, if you speak to anybody that really knows me, not what the media says and all that stuff, the people who really know me, they tell you I never was a big drinker. But I won't deny, of course, there was many social situations where I drank, right? And even till today, you go to a dinner and they offer you a glass of wine. You might do that once or twice a week, or you might go out just to blow up some steam after work, happy hour, whatever. And you might have one or two drinks. People don't realize how much that really affects you, because after, and I only came to this conclusion. It's not like I'm some kind of genius. It was just, hard trial and error, but I was in there, and for so long, right? For so many years, I took nothing that altered either my state of mind or got me inebriated. I never touched any of that stuff. Right. So, and then after so long of that, I realized that we live in a society of alcoholics, because even if you have 1 or 2, 3 drinks a week, it does affect you. And you only learn that when you're absolutely 100% sober for year after year after year after year. And you learn the beauty of a sober mind, man. And you connect to that deep part of you that it's congruent that it's congruent because you're not escaping anything. Because listen, let me tell you something. And this happens all the time. And I pray for these people because I know the horrors of addiction because I've seen them firsthand from people that I really care about. And I've seen the disasters that they have made of their lives and the people that they've hurt because of an addiction. But when you realize that, and you get that sense that I'm not going to escape this. I'm not going to use this weed to escape or this drink to escape this feeling that, because what are we looking for at that moment when we do that? We just want to change how we feel. And so it would have been very easy for me, man, to smoke and drink. I mean, if you think there's drugs out here, there's drugs in prison. There's an epidemic of drugs in prison. So I could have chosen to say, hey, because every day is tough in prison, Jay. Every day is pressure. Every day is pressure, and there's stress, and you're verbally and emotionally and spiritually abused. It's a abuse from the top down, from the people that run the place to the people that are institutionalized. It's a culture of abuse.
Absolutely.
And so, I met people that have slept for a year straight. A year straight, they slept 20 hours a day. So I could have easily done that. I could have smoking and taking the drugs that would have allowed me to escape for those moments. Right. I chose not to do that. And let me tell you, man, every day I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I've been a month out and my body is so accustomed to waking up early that at 6 o'clock, it's like my body just goes boom and it lights up, right? So every day I woke up at 5 in the morning and I went to sleep 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And you'd be saying, what the hell were you doing? I was making the best of every single moment that I was given. Because I knew, and to play on the sobriety, like I said, you learn the beauty of a sobriety, of a sober mind when you have these long periods of sobriety, and you connect to that deeper sense. It's just this congruency, man. This congruency, and it gives you strength and clarity and focus and drive. Your priorities change. So anybody who's watching this, man, I would strongly recommend go on a hiatus, man. Go on a healthy hiatus and go gun-ho, jump in the water and do everything that, if you want, call my brother. He's a specialist at this and he's super passionate about it. And he will talk you to you're asleep about it.
Well, I want
to do a lot of research.
You hit on something I don't want to go. We have one more point, which is the most important point, which is love is all that matters. But we're not there yet because I really want you. I want to just say something about what you just said. Now, you don't know me this well. Your brother knows me a little bit better, but I don't drink alcohol, and I have not drank any alcohol since I was 34 years old. So I'm almost 15 years. I've done a lot of deep research on alcohol. My audience knows, alcohol is a solvent. Alcohol is actually the greatest, how do I say this? It's the greatest enemy of humanity that people don't understand. The dark forces, whoever you want to label them as, give people alcohol to keep them down here, dude.
Yeah.
To lower their consciousness.
Yeah, totally.
Keep them in hate, anxiety, regret, despair, blame, humiliation, shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear. Think about what alcohol does to your consciousness. It literally suppresses it, right? We know that it's a depressant. Alcohol is a depressant. It's a nerve toxin, a solvent. When you look what alcohol does in actually other unstable soluble chemical or what am I saying? Fluid formulas or solutions, it's insane what it does. And yet here, the people that run this world, the country, whatever you want to call them, the demons, the fallen angels, whatever, they're advertising it on television for people to drink at social gatherings and big events.
Right.
And so you keep people down here. I always say this line is, the line of integrity, right? Like you have to be 200 conscious.
And that's a beautiful word that you just said.
Right. But you have to be there, bro, to even understand what you and I are saying. Because not right now, but a lot of people who watch this, who drink, are going to be like, fuck Jay and screw Carlos because they don't, you got to be able to have a pop with your boys or, blah, blah, blah. You already know. And dude, what does it get you?
Listen, it's very important what you just said. And I want to kind of expound on that because it's very serious. First of all, to all those guys that say FJ and F Carlos, I've been there, done that. I grew up in Miami, going out since I was, 17 years old with all the managers and owners and all that stuff. I've lived that lifestyle. And I know what it's like. And like I said, I learned about the social stigmatism, right? So, it's very common. You're in a party and you just want to kind of alter your state and it makes it more fun. But what I realized is that it's actually the opposite. Right. It's funny because this blew my mind, man. I went and reported because, as a convicted felon, you have to go report. And, there's a probation, all that stuff. And I went to the probation office. And one of the first things that my probation officer told me, she said, you can drink. You're allowed to drink.
Right. They're like, go back out there, bro. And I
said, what?
Back here. Right.
No. So I said, okay, whatever. So listen, I've been out almost 2 months now, right? And Jay, I have not had a single desire.
Right. Why?
I can't tell you how many people have come to my house, well, obviously family and friends, and people that I haven't been in 10 years and celebrating, and they're drinking. Oh my God, let's celebrate! And I've never had the impulse because I'm so serious. I know what it's like now, and I noticed the difference. The difference for me is that when I do that, it makes me less present of the moment.
Absolutely, bro.
I mean, less aware of the moment because it's kind of like that part of me is just going. So I'm going to be fully present in this moment right now and notice everything in full awareness. And you can't accomplish that unless you're totally sober. And so that was a gift for me to realize that.
I mean, man, I got so much love in my heart for you for saying that because it takes balls to say that. But a lot of people in our society will never say that. And as you know, they'll never come to that awareness because it's too hard. I mean, think about this, right? Like you go out to the restaurant, you go out to the bar, you go to the game, you go wherever, and then they come up and they're like, "Oh, you're not drinking, bro?
Yeah, you don't want to be the party pooper.
You're not going to drink with your boys. You're not going to have a brew." I mean, like, dude, I remember when I was, in the corporate world before I got out, when I was 36, 35, 36, 37, and, you're at seminars and you're with people and they're all holding their cocktails. And I swear to you, dude, I literally would hold a glass with ice and water in it and act like I was drinking a vodka tonic.
Yes.
Because I didn't want to have the humiliation and the shame. Now, I laughed back then because I was a wage slave in that box, as you labeled it in the very beginning. But it's like so many people are stuck in the box because they really cannot rebel from popular, cultures and norms and mores that drinking is okay.
And you know what? You know what it is too? And they're probably going to hate me for saying this, but I also know the difference here. And I don't want people to think, you had a drinking related charge and you got traumatized and that's why you learned this stuff and that's why you absolutely not. But I learned, as I travel through my mind, as you can imagine, I had a lot of time to think about a lot of things, right? So as I'm sitting there, I learned to traverse through my mind and just, why did I do this? Why, what was the meaning of this? And a lot of the reason why people think, and I don't care what they say, it's a lot of social pressure. You use it to diffuse the social pressure. Right. And let me tell you something. Prison teaches you to be fully alive and fully present and not escape any moment and be aware and have an eye-to-eye conversation and not look at your phone or look around. You have to be there right here, right now, right? And so talk about pressure. So, and now it's such a gift, man, because I can enjoy. I don't feel like I need something to make the moment, to embellish the moment, to make it better. This moment is great as is.
Right.
This moment is great as is. Why? I don't need to embellish it. And I especially don't need to embellish it with poison because that's really what's coming in. If you really study the chemical structures, I mean, if you really get technical about it, it's poison.
Bro, it is. Bro, it is. It's a solvent. Right. Alcohol is a solvent. It's a nerve toxin. And by the way, before we go to love is all that matters. Why do you think they call it spirits? People don't see this, dude. Spirits, because it's dark, evil energy that enters the human suit when you are under the influence, again, down here in shame and apathy from being drunk.
Yeah. And, listen, people don't need to go to prison to understand this. I'm sure that everybody's had a moment where they were sober and a friend of theirs was shit-faced drunk and they did some stupid stuff that they were like, oh my God, people act so retarded on this. It was the same thing for me. While I was in there, I was friends with guys that were awesome people, right? I mean, you know, whatever. They were in prison, but they were great guys, right? And all of a sudden, man, they would smoke or they would drink and they would do the stupidest, most reckless, dangerous things. And my brother to link that, and I just realized, you know, it's man, it really, if you be alive. I mean, I'm not condoning it, you know, I'm not condescending anybody that does it. And, you know, if you have a glass of wine with your dinner, well, then so be it. But, you know, when it becomes a pattern, it's really detrimental to the happiness, the aliveness, and the presence that you can feel within you, man, when you don't have these things in your body and when your body is running like a machine. And, you know, I'm so blessed to come out into an environment where this is what my brother lives, eats, you know, he's constantly, you know, and this is something that I get to share with him. And it's so incredible, man. It changes. It really does change your life. It completely revolutionizes your life.
Well, I mean, I just want to because we can talk about this subject all the time. I don't find a lot of people that have your attitude and viewpoints about things. But the truth is that even a glass of wine is brainwash.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote in the book that you read, you know, that, and this is a scientific fact, that only 4 ounces of alcohol, regardless of the grain or the quality or the content of the alcohol, the human body can actually digest and remove.
Yeah.
So when people say, oh, I just had a glass of wine, well, dude, this is an 8-ounce energy drink or 12 fluid ounces of energy drink. And it's small and skinny. And do you think that people are really getting 4 ounces of wine when they drink wine?
No.
Never.
Never.
Exactly. So that's a scam too, because they'll support, well, 1 glass of wine is actually good for you. It has polyphenols, or it has resveratrol or some other nonsense.
Right.
You know, the pharmaceutical companies will fund studies that are bogus as it is, saying that, you know, 1 glass of wine is good for you. So anyway, like you said, we're not gonna label and cast shame or aspersions on people that want to drink alcohol. If you want to drink alcohol, it's your right, your life. Do whatever you want, but you will never, as you said very elegantly, I may add, you will never reach full optimization of the body, soul, heart, and spirit under the influence of alcohol, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. And my message to people out there is, forget about the health stuff, which is really, really important. But if you don't want to focus on that, if you're not, you know, that type of, you know, you're not that focused on that area, I would only tell you, for your happiness and your peace of mind, nothing like it.
Exactly.
Nothing like it.
So the last point, and it's the most important point that we can talk about, and this has been a profound, so far, hour and 12-minute show. And thanks, bro. I really appreciate you coming on. I really do. I have very profound love for you. Why is love all that matters, man?
Well, I think in the bullet points that you made me send you, which I kind of felt awkward about, because it was like, I just need you to ask me questions, man. I don't really, you know, I'm not some guru or anything like that. I've never thought of myself that way. But I truly learned a lesson that love is the greatest weapon. You know, like I said, I went into possibly one of the most violent environments that you could possibly forced into, you know, violent, perverted, sick, abused. There is no, I mean, if you thought you knew from the movies and the shows, you don't know anything. So like I said, I never had to act in violence. And that came from a deep belief. You know, when this happened, it was tragic not only for the family that got deeply affected, but it was also tragic for my family. You know, for all my life, I was kind of like the glue that almost kept all of them together. I guess that was my lot in life. And, you know, when I went to prison and I went away, my family broke up. You know, my father and my mother divorced. You know, my brother went his way. You know, he was trying to figure himself out. You know, he's left alone. My sister, very young as well, had to go her own way. And it was just like this ugly feeling to be together, right? And so my thing was, how do I bring these people back, right? How do I bring these people back? I can't lose my family. And so that was a big thing, that I knew that no matter how uncomfortable or no matter how atrocious it was, I always operated from love first, because I knew that at the end of the day, at the end of the day, that's what we all really fight for. I mean, we just want to be loved. We just want to have the experience of love. We want to be approved. We want somebody we want to feel important to somebody. I know that, right? And that just goes across the board. I don't care where you grew up. I don't care what your circumstances are. It doesn't matter if you're from Russia or Japan. At the end of the day, love is our deepest human need. And if you're clear about that, and confident about that, you don't have to be this like lovebird, cheesy guy that, oh, I love everybody. No,
right.
You know, I'm a man that's strong and focused and determined, but you know, sometimes masculine energy is not very elegant, as you know. Right. We're about, you know, taking this challenge and breaking through, and no matter who's in my way, and I'm going to punch my way out of it. But you know, I know that at the end, what is it that I'm fighting for? Right. What is it that I'm fighting for? I'm fighting because I want to be loved, man. And I know that everybody is the same. And when you get to prison, you know, one of the things, and I'm just kind of going to summarize it for people a little bit with this love thing, and you know, how to create a safe haven in hell. I became deeply involved because I realized that, you know, Carlos, this is not about you. And I became really involved at the things that I saw wrong in prison, right? So I became this kind of very political prisoner where I would fight for our rights, and I would write things and legal things to change the system. But what I saw was young kids, you know, 18, 17, 19, 21 years old coming into this environment, right? And, you know, growing up without a father and just looking at the atrociousness of what this is like, because these guys are coming back out into our society, right? So for me was, how do I fix this? And from that desire, I started to, you know, contact with a couple of buddies who had the same thoughts. And most people don't know this, but we created, it was just a one day a week meeting in the mornings. We would do kind of like a Bible study, and we would just gather together, and it was a handful of us. And within 3 years, we built it into the largest self-betterment program in the Florida prison system, with over 350 active participants who were like gung-ho about the programs. And, you know, we covered everything from, you know, spiritual classes to real estate and business and how to be a good father and all this stuff, right? And so when you become involved like that, I mean, Jay, I'm a guy who grew up from Miami. Right. Fast forward 5 years later, and I have a classroom with 35 cons, and I'm supposed to teach them something, right? So I went into this deep search, right? Because I needed to give them something. Yeah. So it was a hell of a spiritual progress for me to be able to give, which is a testament, as you know, when you want to give, you grow. So, but the point of the matter is, when you get to meet these guys and you hear their stories, and you don't sit there from the judgment seat, but you kind of really put yourself in their shoes. One of my friends always told me, Carlos, you can't know something until you get close to it. And when you get close to these people and you hear them and you realize and you see the emotional scars, you know, to me, that was deeply moving. And I realized that, man, these guys just need a little love, man. That's all it is. They've been deprived of their life. They've been abused all their life. They've been a victim of violence all their life. Of course, they're going to react this way. Yeah. So my thing was, how do I do that, right? And it's, you know, I hate to say the Gandhi saying, but, you know, it's about being the change that you want to see. Right. And so I knew that I had to operate from that place. And let me tell you, man, I can't tell you from a social standpoint in an environment where everything is really quick, you know, a fight can break out over nothing, right. You know, and it's not just a fight. You could be dead of a stabbing in the neck with a shank, with a prison shank over nothing. I've seen people stabbed, and I've seen people die over the most ridiculous things in prison, right? And I don't know what stronger testament there is that every single situation that I navigated, love was always at the end, and it was the greatest weapon because it diffused everything. If you go to somebody and you know that at the end they're acting out of love, it diffuses them. It diffuses them. And when you actually, you know, it's that saying, you know, people don't care how much you know, they care how much you care. You know, it's about how much you care. Right. Exactly. So when you give that to somebody and you see the transformation, what an incredible weapon, man. what an incredible weapon. And for me to be sitting here and tell you that I never had to act in an act of violence, and that before I left, man, I mean, I had officers that were, you know, the warden of the prison shook my hand, which is unheard of, you know, because awesome. they're not supposed to touch you. You know, I had officers that were counting down with me. I had, you know, guys in the prison that were celebrating my release because
awesome, man.
They knew what I was about. I never hid that. You know, I wasn't cheesy with it, but it was just like, hey, man, you know, we're in this together, man. We're in this together, and at the end, we want love. So what are we fighting for? You know, let's get real. Let's get real. I don't have to be feminine to acknowledge the fact that I need love and I want it. So it was that process. And for me to see the transformation in people and to see how you could diffuse situations in acts of love, I mean, it was, for me, it was the greatest weapon, man. These principles, these beautiful principles that are taught to us in the scriptures. Like I said, I'm a very pragmatic guy, right, and I'm a results-oriented guy. If this stuff doesn't work, please don't bother me and don't waste my time. And so the scriptures say, test these things. Don't just take my word for it. Test these things so that you know that they are true. And that's exactly what I did. I stuck to the principles and I lived them day to day. And I listen, I'm here today, sound, safe, in one piece, because of the grace of God and because I know that it was through his love that I operated. And for me, that's the greatest lesson that I think that people can take from my story is, you know, my life became like a collection of all those cliches that you grow up, you know, listening to your parents talk about. You know, you don't know what you have until you lose it. If you love somebody, let it go. You know, even payback's a bitch. I mean, my life became a collection of that, a living collection of all of that. And I realized, you know, that at the end of it, man, love is all there is, man. And that's what really bonds us and unites us. That's what we all love. Well, that's what we all desire. So I chose that to be my foundation as to how I operate. You know, even when my family was breaking up and they were fighting about all kinds of things, I remember calling them to the prison. They came to visit me. I'm like, listen, I don't want to hear about the circumstances. The only way that we're going to fix the circumstances is that we need to make a commitment that we part from love. We start from love. Our foundation is love. Because if you operate from a sense of love, then you know that I'm never going to try to take advantage of you. And right. what a beautiful social system that has been laid out for us in these amazing principles, in these amazing scriptures. It's just that most people don't live by them. But if you actually live by them, not only do you change your life, but you change other people's lives too. You know, and I think that's the greatest weapon.
I mean, I'm pretty much speechless, bro. Pretty amazing. I mean, I'll give you a couple of things. You know, my wife, you know, is really probably my now greatest spiritual mentor. You know, she told me something when we first started dating each other. She said, there's only two purposes that human beings have on this planet in physical expression, and that is to give and to receive love.
Yes.
And that's basically saying the exact same thing that you just said, because we want to give our love to others and to the universe, and we must receive love from others, which is, again, the whole quantum physics aspect of what you put out is what comes back.
Yeah. And you know what, Jay?
If you're receiving that or giving that, then you are malfunctioning at your state of being level.
Yeah. And just to add a little piece to that, this is actually a bullet point that I erased, but it plays right into it. God has his plan, right? Yeah, one of my points was learning how to be a friend.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many guys I left in there, man, that, you know, they're in their 40s, 50s. I met a guy, you know, I have a friend that's 72 years old.
Awesome, man.
And some of these guys, you know, they're, you know, developed and they have their identities and they've gone through life, and they said, Carlos, you are the only friend I've ever had.
Wow. That's awesome.
And, you know, it comes from that place. It comes from, you know, just learning how to be a friend. It says, the scriptures say that a friend will go further than a brother. And for me, it was about showing that this works. This works. I believe in this, and I will die trying to prove it. And, you know, and I just had these amazing relationships where, for me, what a great gift that someone that's been accustomed to so many things that are so different, and for him to say, to trust, because you're in a place where nobody trusts anybody.
Right.
I mean, you're sleeping to a guy who has, my next door neighbor had 22 life sentences. And the next guy, he started his life sentence in 81. I was born in 81.
Right.
So, and you got to sleep next to these guys. You got to, rub elbows with. So it's a place where you don't trust anybody. Right. And what a horrible place to live. Listen, Jay, I used to leave my locker open in prison, and because I didn't want to live persecuted in my mind. I said, if you rob me, they're going to steal from me. I was never robbed, never stolen from, nothing, because I believe it was because people knew where I was operating from. And for someone like that who grew up like that to tell you you're the only friend that I've ever had, what an amazing thing, man. That thank you for trusting me. Thank you for trusting me not to break your heart, because we're heartbroken. People get heartbroken. That's why we put our walls up, But when you learn how to be a friend and you take those defenses down and you learn to give that first, if you ever want to receive something, give it first. Learn how to give it first, and you're going to see how it comes back. So for me, it was love is a powerful weapon, and I'm going to prove it. And that's what I did, man. I never had to lift a finger in violence, and people were applauding on my way out. I was never scared of telling people when my release day was, just in case they did anything to me. None of that. I started telling them a year in advance, hey, man, I leave next year. So, for me, that's that part of it. Prison is not a pretty thing. It's not something that I would advise anybody to do. But from a human perspective, I really got to know those deep things that connect us, that really matter to us. And for me, from a human experience, to learn about the human sensibilities was just a powerful, beautiful lesson, and one that gives me an immense amount of purpose and desire to just kind of extend that out.
Amazing, man. So if people want, because a lot of people are going to watch this, so if people want to connect with you, reach out to you for possible opportunities, because I'm sure you're going to get reached out to by a lot of people. Like, what's the best way that people can connect with you? And before you answer, I'll ask you, are you going to work with your brother? Are you going to get back into music? Like, what's next for Carlos?
Listen, I'm fresh out almost. So a lot of things are on the table. Music
is got out of the hole, homie.
Music, by the grace of God, man, like I said, I played for 5 years on the chapel praise team. And that was another amazing experience, because I got to know so many amazing musicians. And, listen, what an incredible job, right? I started out playing, jolly music for people at bars. And now I'm at 8 o'clock in the morning, on a Sunday service, playing for people that really need to hear from this creator, right? So I've seen the toughest of toughest buckle their knees and fall down on their faces and just cry from the weight of their consciousness. So what an incredible gift for me to create that atmosphere for them to be able to connect like that. So, recently I was told that I have an opportunity to actually be in that genre and do it professionally. Listen, music is my passion. I'm a musician at heart, and I'm always going to do it no matter what, whether it's professionally or by hobby. And, I'm going to spend my money on it. It's just what I love to do. Now, if it's given to me professionally, which has been offered, I'll take that. But you and I have to be realistic. I got to pay for my electricity. I got to pay for this iPhone that I call a demon.
Play the money magic system, homie.
Listen, I can't, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the efforts of my brother and my family. My brother gave me the best welcome home that I could have possibly imagined. And, by the time I got out, he had everything set up. He had a computer for me, an email, all this stuff. And, obviously, like I said, Jay, for 10 years, health and the science of health was fascinating to me. And it's something that me and my brother deeply bonded over. And, through some of his trials, he developed a business out of it and how to help people. And not only is it a very scientific based company that he has, but he also is a super ethical guy. He's out here to help people. And what an incredible platform for me to do what I do. I love the field and I love to help people. So yeah, of course, part of my bond with him and my relationship with him is anything that I can do to help you grow your company, I'm going to be here, man, because I love the subject anyways, and I love helping people. And I love to preach about health and how your brain works when you're healthy and optimizing. And you already know, I don't know if you've seen the pictures. I'm going to send you the pictures. The day I got out, I'm dealing with COVID-19, which is another craziness, right? I just fresh out of prison and I'm dealing with COVID-19. And so my brother, he's so funny, man. I sat down on the couch and here comes a phlebotomist and he infuses me with all this, things for your immune system to make you strong and all these vitamins and minerals and all this stuff. So what a gift, and if I could do that for people, great, So it definitely growing his company is a priority to me, and helping people in that field is a deep passion of mine. So certainly I'm going to be a part of it, and what a gift that I get to be a part of it.
Do you want me to put your email out to people so if they can connect with you, or you don't want me to give your email out?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Listen, I'm here. You and I talked about this. I got a call from a concerned mother with her son in prison, and she kind of wanted to get my take on what's going on. And I reached out to the kid. He doesn't even know me, and I said, listen, man, I'm just a fellow warrior that knows where you've been. I've heard it and seen it all. Right. So you can talk to me about anything, man. I'm a super approachable guy, and I love deep conversations. So people can reach out to me. It's Carlos at medicalhealthinstitute.com. And that's where you can reach me. And I encourage you, reach out to us, and we'll tell you about if you want to get healthy and you want to get determined and driven and find purpose and push through, man, we got you.
Man, seriously, brother. This has been amazing. I knew it was going to be amazing, but you never know how amazing a thing is going to be until it actually happens. And now that you just dropped all sorts of wisdom and science and love and meaning and context, the world is a better place because you can share your story and you can have such an outrageously, loving, positive, exuberant view on everything that happened to you. And again, that's the whole beauty of life. And you obviously have figured it out. And the beauty of life is everything that happens to us is a learning experience.
Yes.
Depending on how we perceive it. And then not only on how we perceive it, but how we act upon it. And you are literally using your time in the hole as a platform to help and to serve. Yeah.
And, it's a journey, Jay. I never want to get to the place where I feel like I've arrived, and I think God will never allow us to do that. He gives us, imagine, he gives us science that he created just so we can tinker with this stuff and be entertained. And I think that it's going to be a journey, and it's going to be a search until the last day of my breath, my last breath. My last heartbeat will be a learning experience, and any way that I can serve, man. It's a deep thing that I have within me after everything that's happened. And what a great opportunity, man. Thank you for this conversation. I can't tell you how much it means to me to have this intellectual conversation and spiritual conversation with you. Like I told you before on the phone, and I'll say it here for everybody to listen. When I was away, my brother, he was left alone, and, the relationship with my father was, shaky, and, I was his older brother, and he was, trying to find himself. And, for a long time he was searching. And then one day he met you, man. And it was like that last little piece of approval that he needed to break through. It was almost like you pushed him through the threshold, and he, he completely changed after that. And I just want to thank you for that, because I wasn't there to give him that. Yeah, and you were such an inspiration for him and such a role model for him. And I'm deeply grateful for that, man, because it's almost like you got my back.
And truthfully, to your brothers, of course, and I receive all that, and I appreciate it. To your brother's credit, when we sat down next to each other, it was just like, boom, the energy's aligned, and that's the way I am with everybody that I meet in my life that is inspired the same way. And you guys both have the same energy. It's like I told you, when you first came on the show, you are the older brother of him. You guys have literally the same energy as
we do.
I can only imagine you guys before this time, right? You guys are in heaven and souls aligned, and you're just all right, I'm going to be Miguel. I'm going to be Carlos. you guys jumped in and volunteered and did all that. But man, truthfully, bro, I have, like I said, deep love. So you guys, I put his email in there. I put his Gmail, but he's also at Carlos at medicalhealthinstitute.com. Reach out to him, connect with him. If you're, anybody in my audience who is watching this and profoundly inspired and moved, as most of us have been, because the comments are amazing, share it. Excuse me. please share this across social media, because I really do think that this message today from him was very inspirational. And if anything, it was aspirational, because more people should wake up to this new energy that is enveloping the earth right now. Because as you know, it's all about raising the vibration of the collective, man. We got to get more people to think like you do, so that we can end all this nonsense. So, man, again, my amazing thanks to you. Please, guys, if you're watching this, yeah, man, love to you and your brother, of course, too. And before we don't end, I'll just end the show, and then you and I can talk for a second. But just to everybody, again, please share this. And please, if you do share this across your social media, write a comment and say, hey, this is a great story. Anyone can overcome anything with a profound will and a profound desire, and of course a plan. And he's always had a plan. So remember, everybody, raise your vibration to optimize your love creation. We will see you guys very, very soon.